Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. In this video, I'm going to debunk a little bit the DM shortage thing that's been bouncing around. And if you want to run an adventure and you want to become a DM, I'm going to give you kind of a quick process to create your first adventure and make you hopefully be comfortable running games. So, number one, the first place I saw this was on Questing Beast. I think a lot of people have. There's an article that came out in November talking about how's the DM shortage in New York City. And weirdly, before I read the article, I thought to myself, this probably also connects with like paying DMs and stuff, which it does. But what I want to talk about here is the things they say, the reason why people have trouble being DMs, basically. And I want to debunk these things a little bit. Now, Ben over at Questing Beast and also Jim Murphy to a certain extent, watch those videos. I'll put links in the description if you haven't seen them already. They talk a little bit about how in OSR, it's a little bit different. But I don't know this is an edition thing. So let's look at what this article says. Playing the role of Dungeon Master can be a rewarding job, but it's sometimes thankless and always taxing. Okay, rewarding job. Yeah, I love being a Dungeon Master. Can be is the important part. Some people don't like running games. Taxing? I don't know. If you're the type of person that likes to be a Dungeon Master, it's not taxing at all. And thankless, play with a different group. If there's so many players out there, right? Find another group if it's thankless. Your players should thank you for running the game, just like you should thank them for showing up. It can be overwhelming for a new player, and especially DMs who have to know all the rules, adjudicate them, create and manage a story, play logistics for the group, and cater to each player's needs, cater the experience to each player's needs. So let's hit these one at a time. Needs to know all the rules? There aren't that many rules in D&D, especially 5th edition. I mean, it's basically roll a d20, beat a target number, right? Also, there's books there. You look them up when they need to be looked up, right? Simple as that. I would argue there's more different kinds of rules in most OSR games, especially if you do something like 1st edition Dungeons & Dragons. That's a rules-heavy game. Most, BX is not, obviously, and 5e is not rules-heavy. There's lots of little nuances, but it's not rules-heavy by any means. Adjudicate the rules? Yeah, of course, that's part of your thing. Manage the logistics? I guess. I mean, when I'm running a game, I say I run a game on this night and the group shows up or doesn't show up, says they can come or doesn't come. Is that the logistics that they're talking about? You pick a night, you run your game. I don't understand why this is an issue. I'm not worrying about how my players are getting to the game. They get there if they say they're going to play, right? Simple as that. Finally, this cater the experience to each player. This part, again, I think is a little kind of BS. When we are playing D&D, no matter what the edition, what we are doing is creating a world. The players need freedom and agency in that world. And then the world will be catered to them because they'll do the things they want to do. So all you really need to do is know the basics of the rules, have a group of people that want to play, pick a day, run the adventure, and give the players agency. This is key. Trust your players, give them agency, let them do the things that they want to do in the adventure, and they will then have an experience that was catered to them. You didn't have to do anything special to do that. You just created a world. I think this is where we have this disconnect. If we are creating this story that the article says that we need, now we have a problem because now this story needs to cater to the players, right? This is what it's saying. But if we create a situation, the story writes itself. So I'm going to talk about a process where if you are brand new to this and you'd like to be a Dungeon Master, and you've been nervous because it's complicated, I'm going to walk through step by step how you can make an adventure. And I'll even just off the top of my head kind of create this adventure in some level, and we'll go from there. So let's take a look. Okay, so here are the simple steps to setting up your adventure, and then I'm going to talk about running the adventure. Step 1, create a situation. This could be almost anything. And if you are somebody who plays, not even runs, RPGs, you probably read novels, play video games, watch movies, read comic books. You've got some ideas. So what's the situation? Maybe goblins have taken the statue from the center of town. Maybe the party is traveling through the woods and is starving because they ran out of food. Maybe the party's lost. Maybe there's a reward for something going on. Maybe the town's under siege. Something's going on. Step 2, create a reason why the PCs want to get involved. So again, if they come to the town and they're like, well, these goblins stole our statue, Why do the PCs care about that? This is something we got to work out, right? There's got to be a reason. Maybe there's a classic thing would be a reward. If we're doing the traveling through and they're hungry, maybe they need to eat, right? Or there's going to be a penalty. These are things we do, right? We create a reason for the PCs to become involved in this situation. Then we're going to create or find a map. What we want to do here is have a basic idea of how things are laid out. And it depends on what you're doing, right? If it's the goblins stole the thing, you're probably going to want a rough map of the path to the goblins and a map of their lair, right? You don't necessarily need a map of the town. If it's they're searching for food and there's, a camp with food, you might want a map of the camp. So basic. You don't need to make your own map. There's tons of free maps online. And I say free as in not for commercial use. People put maps up to show them off. You can take those maps, use them in your personal games. That's why people show them. That's not really a big deal. Obviously, if you do something like an actual play or you're making a module that you're going to sell, then you're going to want to use commercial maps. But that's a whole other video. Next one, stock the map with enemies and rewards. This would be in the case of the goblins. You put some goblins in the cave. You put the reward, which is the statue, plus some other treasures and stuff. And there you go. You're off and running. Now, you might be saying at this point, well, hold on. If I'm a brand new DM, shouldn't I just find a pre-made, pre-written adventure? No. I would say that if you are starting and this is your first time, you should create your own adventure. If you watch the video from Jim Murphy, he talks a bit about this, and I 100% agree. I think that if you make your own adventure, it's easier for you to adjudicate it and run it because you know the adventure. You made it up. It doesn't have to be something that's super, super complicated. It just needs to be a situation that the PCs want to get involved in that has potential reward for them. Okay, so I'm going to kind of do two of these as we go, just because I think it'll be fun to spitball. So I talked about the goblins. So we've got a village that there's a statue that they worship, right? They have to give thanks or put a offerings to this statue in the village every Sunday at sunset. And if they do not, then they will have, the vengeance of the gods. Something will happen, right? So there's a timer, right? And let's say it's Friday. The goblin stole the statue. They just see it as value, or who knows why the goblin stole it. That may or may not be relevant. At this point, we don't need to know that. So we don't really need the town, but we need a path to the town, and we need the lair for the goblins, right? Let's say the second situation is they're traveling through the woods. This is what I stole from The Hobbit. They're traveling through the woods. They've ran out of food. They haven't found anything to eat. They're camped for the night. They're starving, and they smell roasting meat. And they can't make it out, but they hear voices off the path into the woods. Okay? Two situations here. That's two adventures. Now, how do we play these out? Basically, in the first adventure, they are being rewarded by the town to get the statue. They'll be offered gold pieces, right? That's their reason to get involved. The second one, they're starving, right? They need food. So they're going to want to interact with whatever's in the woods to get hopefully some food for their group. So here we go. Scene 1, as I call it. Intro the player characters. This is up to the players. Simply say, Tony, please introduce your character and let me know what they're thinking or feeling about this situation. How do they get involved in it? Catering to the players, right? Tony's going to tell me why his character cares about this statue. Maybe it's because they're religious. Maybe it's because they want money. Maybe they just don't like goblins and they want to go beat some up. Kevin, tell me about your character and what they're thinking as they smell this meat. Oh, my character hasn't eaten in days and they're weakened and they this and that and whatever, right? They can't eat. If they eat another berry, they're going to strangle someone, right? Now, again, the players are bringing it in. You're saying, why do you want to do this? You're placing that in their hands. You don't just say, okay, you're in a tavern. What do you do? Why does your character want to do this? Why is your character involved in this? This might seem a little heavy-handed, but I think when you're new, and especially since we're running what effectively is a one-shot, we need to get the ball going. Once all the players have introduced their characters, now we do what I call either the journey or the entry phase. So if you're starting with the town, with an intro phase where they're being hired, this and that, you might do some role play and then a little bit of a travel through the forest, whether or not you want to have that be, an encounter or not. That's up to you. But basically, whatever makes sense. Basically, what you've got now is they're traveling from the intro. They know why they're there. They know what they're doing. They're there. Now, you can, and I often recommend this in a case like this Goblin Lair, you might just jump them forward. So it might very well be, okay, why are you in this town? Why did you take this mission? Boom. All right, you've traveled through the woods for half a day. You see this in front of you. You give them the entry. They should decide how they get in. You don't put them in the middle of a combat. You don't do this. You tell them. Maybe you tell them. You can see in the distance the hill that the goblins have dug their cave into. You can't see any entrance from where you are because you're in the woods hidden. What do you want to do? Maybe they scout ahead. Maybe they go around. Maybe they look for a chimney on the top. Player characters will do whatever player characters do. They are creating the moment. In our food situation, what do? Well, there's a bunch of dwarves and one hobbit bandit, right? Go ahead and burgle there, man. Go, right? You're going to send your thief to investigate. So now, again, we have the entry into the situation. Step 3 is the main part of it. And this is the part that you have, in a lot of ways, the least control over. Because once you get that ball rolling, you just go with what the players do. So in the case of the goblins, now there's the entry. They see the 2 guards, they take them out, or they climb down the chimney, or whatever they do, and they go in. Now they're going to go room to room looking for the statue, whether they do it stealthily and just try to take the statue and leave, or they get into fights along the way. That is up to the player characters. You don't need to worry about that. You just do whatever logically makes sense based on what they do. Again, they are catering the experience to themselves. In the case of the meat, your thief goes up. What happens? Is he successful, right? Is this first level thief successful in sneaking in and getting some of the food and going back? If so, that's a real short journey. Or maybe they don't sneak back out, or maybe it's impossible to obviously walk into the middle of the camp and steal the meat, whatever. Basically, they see this. They can make their choice. Do they want to attack the trolls, or do the trolls see the scout ahead and capture them, and then the dwarves have to go? Whatever happens there happens. Again, it's up to the players. They might sneak up, succeed in the sneaking, see these trolls, go back, tell the group, and the group's like, nah, we're not going to go in there. Or what do we know about trolls? Well, you know that trolls can't be outside when the sun comes up. Well, did we see a place where they might go? Yeah, there was a cave. Okay, we're going to wait till the morning until they go into the cave. Or maybe we're going to sneak up on top of the cave and collapse it so that they don't have anywhere to go and they have to flee because they need to look for shelter. Or maybe we fight the trolls, whatever. They basically can decide what they want to do. They will cater the experience to what they want. All you have to do is adjudicate it. All right, scene 4, as we're going to call it, is basically some kind of final confrontation. And when I say that, what I mean is if they're, let's say, in the Goblin's lair, they're going to eventually find, right? Everything building up to finding the statue is scene 3. Scene 4 is when they find it. Maybe it's locked up, or maybe they see the goblins giving tribute to it. And they think, hold on, the goblins also worship this statue. Maybe this is more of a diplomacy thing. Or maybe they're violating it and they need to stop them. Or maybe it's just sitting there and they steal it, right? Could be any number of things, but that's the final thing. The room. It does not need to be a boss fight, right? It doesn't have to be a fight. Let the players decide if they want to fight something. In the case of the trolls, it's going to be basically getting that food, however they get it. Either they wait till the morning and hope there's some scraps left, or they sneak in, or they distract the trolls. Whatever they do to get the food, that's what they want to do. Part of scene 4 is also the reward phase. So in the case of the food, they got the food, they eat it, or possibly they defeat or run off the trolls. They might get the treasure in the cave, right? Including some magic swords. And in the case of the goblins, they get the statue and maybe whatever other treasure, and they head back. All right, scene 5. How does it end? This is sometimes my favorite part as a DM. At this point, I just ask each player, right? I give them the setup. You've got the statue. You're heading back to town. The goblins have been defeated. You made it on time. How does this end? You've got the food, or you defeated the trolls and you have this extra treasure. You've got 5 more days journey through the wilderness to get to where you're going, hopefully. How does this end? And you let each player describe how it ends for their character. Now, if it's a campaign, obviously this has to make sense within the boundaries of the campaign. But if it's a one-shot, it could be next to anything. Maybe they stay on in the village. I think most players, if they've been playing their characters and they're kind of working with the logic of what's happened in the thing, are pretty reasonable. I do this all the time, and rarely does somebody say something completely wacky. Sometimes they'll talk about something that happens 10 years in the future, which I think is super fun. And this, again, wraps a bow around it. When we start the adventure, we ask the players, why is your character here? Why are they getting involved in this thing? When we end the adventure, we ask the players, how does it end for them? And in the middle, we base the adventure around what they do. This caters the experience to the players. This is being a DM. This is emergent story. This is what most people are happy with. Sure, there are people that want a very scripted story, and that's a much smaller group than you would actually think. If you are a DM and you want to run a game in any system, this is all you need to know. And there you go. It's not that difficult to create and run an adventure. It doesn't matter which edition you are playing. The other thing you want to keep in mind is only work within the rules that you feel comfortable working with. That is to say that if you are running 5th edition, let's say, or another example would be like 2nd edition, that have lots of options, limit the options. Say, hey, I'm new to this. I'm just going to use what's in the player's handbook because that's all I have. I know that you want to play this specialized character in the campaign, maybe in a future adventure, but for now, let's just stick what's in the book because this is what I feel comfortable running. Again, since there's a shortage of DMs and there's so many players, if somebody wants to play that special thing that you don't want to have in your game, well, you'll just find another player, right? Well, I hope this video was helpful in some way. If you've never run a game before and you take this advice and run one, let me know. If you have run tons of games, is this kind of what you do when you break it down? I'd be curious because I think this is pretty much the system that most people use. It's just that sometimes things seem more complex than they are when you don't just break them down into simple parts. I'll also point out that while I say scene 3 is all this, I'm using the word scene. Don't take that as scene, scene, scene. What I'm doing is I'm just breaking the thing down. You could call it part, however you want to call it. Scene just seemed to make sense to me. And also for new DMs, sometimes it's easier not to cover so much in the middle, to like jump around a bit. And believe me, the players will be fine with that. They're not going to worry that you jump them from the town right to the dungeon and not play out the 3 days in the woods. In fact, if you're not going to make that really exciting because that's part of the adventure, then they'll be happy you didn't do it. In the description below, you'll find so many things. Links to the 2 videos I talked about, links to my Discord. You can join up over there and chat, links to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. And in any case, I'll talk to you soon.